Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Treks. We are covering the Batman versus Punisher crossovers. First, we are covering Lake of Fire, and then we are covering Deadly Nights. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. Matt, how are you doing this fine evening?
Doing great, Bob. I was really excited when I first saw that we were covering this comic because I knew that we would get to see Asbats again.
You always like to see Asbats, huh?
I really do, Bob. Asbats is one of my favorites. I loved Nightfall. Nightfall was one of my favorite series.
You even owned all 100 issues of the Azrael solo series, Matt.
I sure did, Bob. It was cool because I didn't know how Azrael and Punisher, how their worlds are going to cross over. But it was
Yeah, I
always
mean,
weird.
they're so different, Matt.
They really are. It was always weird for me to see even the DC characters crossing over with Azrael. When Superman and Azrael
Yeah,
team
yeah.
up.
I remember the few times you see Asbats and Superman together. Very strange. Very strange. Well, Matt, so for Lake of Fire, it's written by Denny O'Neil and it's drawn by Barry Kitson. My favorite Denny O'Neil work is his work on the late 80s, early 90s Question series. What's your favorite work by him?
Mine's a bit more of a nostalgia piece, Bob, but it's The Birth of the Demon, which tells the origin story of Ra's al Ghul.
I can't remember who did the art on Birth of the Demon, but the art for Batman v Punisher Lake of Fire is Barry Kitson, who also did the early years of art on the Azrael ongoing with Denny O'Neil that you had. So I'm going to assume that's your favorite for him. For me, my favorite is Barry Kitson drew the reboot of the Legion of Superheroes with Mark Waid in the late odds.
Yeah, Barry Kitson on Azrael, all of his covers, man. He drew all the covers for that stuff too. Those Azrael issues, I wish I still had them because I would love to make a poster or something out of them or wallpaper.
You could do that pizzeria in Little Five Points and just have a bathroom wallpapered in
Yeah.
Azrael's covers.
Wish I would have saved those. Yeah.
Well, Matt, what goes down in Batman v Punisher Lake of Fire?
Well, Bob, Asbats teams up with Punisher to put an end to Jigsaw's plans of igniting an experimental rocket fuel in the Gotham Reservoir.
It's a very strange plot. I like it. It's wacky, but it's a very strange plot for a Batman versus Punisher crossover.
Well, Bob, it's the issue starts in hell with Saint Dumas watching a bunch of fiery people.
That's what St. Dumas is all about, man. We see the Punisher walk into a bar, as is very standard in a Batman, a Daredevil, or a Punisher comic. But I really wanted to believe that this Gotham bar that the Punisher is going into is Noonan's from Hitman. You haven't read the Hitman series, right?
I've read the first issue, first volume,
It's a good series.
a
It's a good
long
series.
time ago, but I know I understand the reference.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to it, or if I have gotten to it, I don't remember it. But I think they may use Noonan's in the adult Harley Quinn cartoon too.
I wouldn't doubt it. But Bob, I'm also not really familiar with the villain, other than I think I shot at him in the video game at some point.
Jigsaw.
Yes,
Yeah. Do you feel like you understand Jigsaw's deal?
I got it. His face is all messed up from somebody.
Yeah, Jigsaw's gimmick. I believe he's a mob boss who Punisher messes up his face. You could say he's the Punisher's only reoccurring antagonist. He's the only guy who just always keeps betraying his way out of getting killed by the Punisher. The Punisher kills him, but it doesn't take.
I remember one other villain in Punisher, and it's the Russian.
Yeah, but that's later. He's in the Garth Ennis
Yeah.
series.
The only reason I know him is Kevin Nash, I think, played him in one of the Punisher films. The outfit is just, it's the Sandman's outfit, but red and white.
Well, also, not to be a pedant, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but Garth Ennis, I don't think he ever used Jigsaw because he didn't like Jigsaw. And he wrote Punisher for 10 plus years, starting in the early aughts. But Ennis had a rule that a villain could only survive the Punisher once, that the second time he showed up, he had to get killed. And I think I might be misremembering, but I think that holds true for the Russian too. So there are reoccurring villains in the Garth Ennis run in the sense that there's people who show up a second time, but they don't show up a third time. If that makes sense.
It does make sense, Bob. You ain't showing
Yeah,
up a second time. Punisher will put a bullet in your brain.
exactly, exactly. And I do think there is something charming about Jigsaw is not the most dangerous or the most competent opponent that the Punisher faces, but he's just the one guy he can never actually kill, right? And so there's something comedic, almost Wile E. Coyote in the Road about it. Oh man, one bit of dialogue I did like from this graphic novel is when he's in the bar. A bar tough asks the Punisher, "Do I look like a bleeding heart?" And the Punisher says, "No, more like a bleeding armpit."
But mine came a page before that. It was
What was yours?
it was actually he Azrael standing in front of the back computer, which constantly changes, and that drove me nuts as a kid. It's always a different setup. It's never just one monitor, or it's either one monitor, 5 monitors, 20 monitors. They could never just make up their mind what they wanted. But Azrael says something along the lines of, Bruce Wayne's database tells me that Reimer has ties to a local criminal, Tony Bresci. I can find Bresci. And Bob, you're like, why is that significant, Matt? Why is that your piece of
It does look pretty bland.
Well, the reason it's important, Bob, is because it messes up the timeline, because it tries to tie this into Nightfall. Because in the later part of the Nightfall thing, I guess it's before Azrael takes out Bane, he's on the hunt for Tony Bresci, and this is when this is supposed to take place.
So this is before he breaks Bane.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, that's
It's like a nail bat thing, yeah. I think that's the issue with Tony Bresci, because he rescues his kids or something.
Well, can I bring up something that's maybe a continuity error, or maybe I'm just misremembering?
Go right ahead, Bob.
Well, John Paul Valley is Batman from, let's see, Batman gets broken in like part 11, right?
Yes.
And then don't we start seeing John Paul Valley as Batman in like part 17, 18?
Yes, yeah.
Isn't he at that point, he's just in a Batman costume, but he has the claws?
For 2 or 3 issues.
And then he doesn't actually make the Asbats suit until Batman 500 before he fights Bane, right?
Correct. So Tony Bresci was around.
Yeah, it's entirely possible I might be misremembering, but I think he builds the Asbat suits in Batman 500.
I was just excited because it said, oh, there's something that ties it into the Nightfall stuff. So that gives you where.
No, that's cool. Did you want to talk about the confusingness?
Oh, yeah.
Pages 29 to 31.
Yes, Bob, page 29 to 31. This is one of the reasons this issue drives me insane. On page 29, you've got Batman. There's this gas, all right, and it's let off, and the Punisher has a gas mask, and he turns around and walks away, but it's not clearly shown that he walks away. You turn the page, and man, Batman is pissed off, but you never really see the Punisher going anywhere. Do you see what I'm saying?
I can see why it's confusing. It is interesting because Punisher does say now while he's busy, and the implication is that he slips away.
Right. On page 31, you've got him on top of a building watching Batman get in the Batmobile. Oh, I escaped. I just needed to see a little more there.
I think you're right that this is a miscommunication between O'Neill and Kitson, or maybe a problem with O'Neill's script. But I would say, to slightly defend it, it is funny to have Punisher do the disappearing act on Batman, if that makes sense.
That may be what they were going for.
Maybe another layer of humor. And again, this isn't really realized, but it's implicit that it's Punisher is doing a disappearing act on Batman, but Asbats is so consumed with his visions of St. Dumas that he doesn't even care or notice. That's good. That's good. My favorite art from this graphic novel is on page 37, and this is really cheesy. But you've got fire and water running together on the page, and it's just very nice alchemical symbolism, right? Like, I really dig it. And I also love lower on the page, you see Asbats operating the crane and the wrecking ball that broke the reservoir, unleashed the water on the fire. And he's operating the levers of the crane and the wrecking ball with his ridiculously long claws on his gauntlet. And that's just so cute. It's cute to see them clutched around the levers.
It's really weird to see him holding the levers. That was the one bad thing about claw hands.
Not good for fine manipulation, only good for clawing.
There is nothing sexy about that.
Getting to like what I like about the Punisher Jigsaw relationship, it's really very funny on like pages 39 to 41. It's nice to see Jigsaw just jack the Punisher. He hits him in the jaw with a phone. He gives him a dress shoe to the chin. And then the Punisher just hurls him off a building. This is Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote energy I dig from Jigsaw and Punisher.
Yeah. I like that whole play going back and forth, Bob, but there is one slightly humorous piece that I like that's my favorite piece of art. It's on page 42. And it's where Azbat's swinging into Jigsaw, who's been thrown off the building. In my brain, you would think Batman would go and swing in to rescue him, but actually, Batman goes in and throws him through a window into it.
Which is funny because on the one hand, he does rescue him because he's continuity wise, he's not in killer mode yet.
Right,
But on the other hand, it's also just he rescues him in the most painful way imaginable, right?
right.
Drop kicking him through an office building window of glass.
Which then you get a bit of some cheese here and predict a little preview of what's going to be happening in the next issue where Jigsaw's meeting up with the Joker.
Yeah, and you also get Jigsaw yelling "Cut me" at Joker, and Joker calling him Jigster. I really enjoyed that. It's quite funny. Anything else about Batman v Punisher: Lake of Fire, Matt?
Not really, Bob. I mean, did you dig the fight at the end? There's just a slight like tussle. It didn't really play out the way I wanted to. I just expect more out of my big hero fights. They currently can only get away with so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, shall we move on to Punisher v Batman: Deadly Nights?
That's right, Bob. So in Punisher Deadly Nights,
Punisher v Batman: Deadly Nights.
Punisher v Batman Deadly Nights.
Yeah, yeah. So it's written by Chuck Dixon. My favorite Chuck Dixon work is always going to be Birds of Prey. But for you, what is it? The Nightwing series?
No, Nightfall. I always loved Nightfall.
Well, he only did half of that, though.
Yeah, but there's always not good stuff there in Nightfall. He did a lot of it.
All right, I still need to actually read his whole run on Tim Drake Robin.
Yeah, I think you should. I think you really.
I'd be very curious to do that. And then the artist is John Romita Jr. My favorite JR work is always going to be Daredevil Man Without Fear.
I don't have one.
That's lame, Matt. You should get into your JR.
I looked at a lot of the art. He's got some good stuff on Amazing Spider-Man.
He also drew some really bad Amazing Spider-Man because JMS was writing it.
Right, it hurts it a little bit.
No, he was doing the early 80s X-Men with Claremont, though. Some of that stuff is really good.
Well, Bob, in this comic, we have the Punisher returning to Gotham City because he's on the hunt for Jigsaw, who has teamed up with the Joker.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed both the first line and first image of the Punisher in this comic, where he's thinking, I hate Gotham, and he's jumping down from a bunch of crates in a warehouse, John wooing with the two pistols.
Yeah, and well, then, Bob, in a couple of pages later, you have Batman jumping into action as well. And it's a
Where
similar.
he's jumping down.
Right, so tell me, Bob, who had the better intro art?
I prefer John Romita Jr.'s swole Punisher to a swole Batman, man.
I like the Swole Batman because it reminds me of like video game covers from that time.
Or it reminds you of the Batman Who Lives from Absolute Batman.
Oh yeah, the Batman who lives. Not really. No, this Batman's too colorful.
Yeah, fair point.
Well, it's
So, Matt, did you love how early in this comic Jigsaw basically appears as Hush in a trench coat with a bandaged face?
You said last week, hey, we're covering Batman versus Punisher, and I was, why for the life of me are we doing this? For some reason, I thought when I saw the guy with the bandages, I'm thinking, oh, this is a Hush thing. Somehow this is tied into Hush. And I was disappointed to some degree because I thought,
No, the reason we're doing this is, remember, we did Punisher versus Archie, and at the end of that, it's Punisher's heading to Gotham City.
correct,
So
yes,
this
this
is
is a sequel to Punisher versus Archie. But that was spawned from our Archie versus Predator coverage.
which was spawned from we were going to cover the Predator cartoon movie, but it sucks. So
That's
we
it.
just wound up covering the two volumes of Archie versus Predator.
There is.
It is just free association, but it's pretty grounded free association.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. I do love the first image of the Joker too, and it is funny to see. I don't feel like he's as swole here as he will be later. It also is hilarious that, Chuck Dixon writes this. He famously had long runs on Batman, long runs on the Punisher. I've read a lot of his stuff on Batman. I haven't read a lot of his stuff on the Punisher, but I never thought about this. Dixon didn't create Tim Drake, but I think he did a lot to define Tim Drake. And I think he did create Microchip, the Punisher's tech assistant. And it's just funny that Microchip and Tim Drake have the same function for Punisher and Bats. And it's very funny how this graphic novel kind of emphasizes that.
Yeah, this reminded me of how much they didn't really know what to do with Tim Drake at the time.
Yeah, he was basically Oracle before Oracle, even though she
Ye-
is Oracle at this point, but they're not using her as heavily as Dixon would in a couple.
Right, yeah. At the beginning of Tim Drake's career, man, that's all he ever did as well. That was, I think, the first several, almost probably the first year and a half.
Yeah, and it's like, bro, you don't have to be in costume to be at the.
You don't have to put it on. Just maybe that's how he like trains him though, the weight of the outfit.
A lot of stuff like I think this eases up later, but in early Tim Drake stuff, there's a lot of stuff of this one's too dangerous for you to go on, Tim.
Yeah. There's a lot of that from what I've been reading in the Cape Crusader volumes.
Although that's with Jason at that point, right?
Yeah. I was cracking up, Bob, really bad on page 27, where you hear Tim talking about some computer terms. And for a minute there, I thought maybe this was the lingo at the time, but I think he's trying to make fun of Alfred. He's someone with real hackitude is mousing around the link farm. I'm gonna have to get to the magic cookie before him and set up a nasty gram for his home box. I couldn't tell if he's cracking a joke at Alfred for computer lingo. Bob, one of my favorite images also is on page 31, where we do see Swole Joker with his dual pistols.
Not only can the Punisher, but a swole Joker.
Yeah. And he shows up and it has my favorite bit of dialogue where he says, I see you boys knew this party was bring your own gun.
Yeah. I like that he's wearing a green turtleneck. Green turtleneck, but a purple sports coat with a red rose on one lapel and a red handkerchief coming out of the pocket on the other lapel. It's cute. Yeah. I will say this image of Batman above the mafiosi but below the moon is very beautiful. Or maybe that should, yeah, I think that's, or maybe it's just a link. But either way,
There's also a really cool image on page 33 that I got to give credit for this Batman image of him jumping and dropping these gas pellets, and they all have bats imprinted on the gas pellets. And there's something about the tendrils or whatever you call them that come from his gauntlets.
oh yeah, that's very cool.
I always hated that as a kid, but as an adult, I've learned, oh, that's kind of a neat look.
This is JR, not Keely Jones. But as kids, we hated Keely Jones. But at least as an adult, I know Keely Jones is awesome. I
Right.
love Keely Jones. I love how crazy his Batman is. It's funny that it visually is pretty similar to the Punisher jumping down and firing on the gangsters from the start of the graphic novel. And it's also just cute because, yeah, it's Batman making it rain with gas bombs.
Yeah. They ramp up the violence in this issue a bit. I think there was way more violence in this particular.
But I think in a way that makes sense, right? Is Chuck Dixon is the more hard-boiled writer of him and Denny O'Neil, whereas Denny O'Neil is more a hippie philosopher.
Yeah.
Even though Asbats is this uber-violent vigilante, it's also all about the Saint Dumas mysticism and Azrael finding himself, where Dixon is just no Punisher kill people.
I will say this, reading these comics, sometimes when you hear the Punisher, the War Journal voice versus Batman's voice, it sounds the exact same, and it's hard to switch. I'm glad they chose to do the writing in a different style for the War Journal. The fonts are different.
That's helpful. Another bit of parallelism, although on the one hand, these two comics are very, very similar, but on the other hand, it is interesting the slight differences in emphasis you see from O'Neil and Dixon. But there is some funny parallels. In the first one, Punisher shoots Asbats in the chest. Then in this one, Jigsaw shoots real bats in the chest. I thought that was pretty good.
Did I'm looking for him. So, Bob, at the end of this issue, we
Well,
get
before that, I saw someone
Okay,
Joker
yeah.
blinding Punisher, page 41. Really good stuff. He fires the gun right in front of his eyes, right? We already mentioned one Hush parallel, which is to say Jigsaw in a trench coat and bandages. But did you notice the other Hush parallel?
Oh yeah, Bob. We get somebody about to Punisher's about to shoot, kill, and murder the Joker. But who's to show up to stop him? Bat. Yeah.
Granted, on the one hand, how many different ways are there to write a Joker scene? Probably there's a lot of them like this. But on the other hand, between JR's hyper detailed art, which really looks like Jim Lee's art, and the whole situation of in Hush, it's Gordon restraining Batman from killing the Joker. Here, it's Batman restraining Punisher from killing the Joker. It does feel like Loeb and Lee were maybe consciously, maybe not, really echoing this scene.
Well, I will say, Bob, page 50, you do have an excellent illustration of Punisher decking Batman that with like
That's great.
his bloodied hands. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I also like the burn that Batman gets on Punisher that maybe Arkham would suit you better.
This is the imagery we constantly see hung up on posters in comic book shops of the time.
It's a
Like
great poster image.
it's all over the place.
It's a great image for sure. All right, Matt. Well, my proposal was going to be that we rank this with Archie versus Punisher as one big Archie Punisher Batman trilogy.
I'm perfectly fine with that, Bob. I don't know where I would place this. Even though it's two stories, I don't think one is much stronger than the other.
They both have their pleasures and they both have their misses.
Right, and I honestly think that the first one is just nostalgia. For me, it's the nostalgia of seeing Asbats again. I think if that hadn't have been then, they would have done the same thing with Bruce Wayne Batman.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the same
And
type of
it
story.
is nice how it worked out where they got to do one with Asbats and one with Bruce Wayne. That worked out pretty well.
I'm thankful enough time went by they didn't do it with the Nightwing as Batman and a Prodigal Son or something like that.
In a way, that could have been really interesting, but yeah, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
could
Gee.
Punisher finally team up with the real Batman, please?
Well, dear listeners, I think our plan is since we're not doing Alien Earth, we maybe will do a season episode of Alien Earth, but we're not going to cover it week to week because I think it's terrible, listeners. We are going to keep working on the Paul Dini Batman stuff, which would mean covering Gotham City Sirens. We're not necessarily going to cover all of Gotham City Sirens, but I think next week the plan is to do the first 7 issues of Gotham City Sirens, which is the original trade paperback called Union. Does that sound good, Matt?
Bob will also be covering Strange New Worlds.
We'll keep covering Strange New Worlds. But in a way, I was depressed about the idea of covering 2 science fiction prequel TV shows and covering it in comics. I like the balance of a show and a comic.
Well, it all works out, Bob.
All right. Well, listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey through the Archie Punisher Batman trilogy. I really enjoyed it. I think Matt somewhat enjoyed
Yes.
it. And we will see you next time. This has been Uncanny Treks.
Thanks for listening.